Tensions between China and Taiwan continue to escalate, but Taiwan is getting strong support from the US. And there's been a new wave of arrests in Hong Kong. All this and more in today's news headlines about China. A bipartisan US delegation visited Taiwan, where they pledged to help bolster defenses against growing Chinese aggression. They met with Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te, who vows to defend Taiwan's sovereignty and push for defense reforms. The visit came shortly after China conducted 2 days of punitive exercises designed to intimidate Taiwan after Lai's inauguration. They called these exercises Joint Sword 2024A. But just a week after the punitive drills, China launched another military exercise around the island. Last Wednesday, Taiwan reported that 28 Chinese fighter jets escorted by warships simulated another military attack on Taiwan. It was a scare tactic to punish democracy, said Michael McCall, the Republican chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He called for an acceleration of arms shipments to Taiwan, which he acknowledged have been slowed in part by the limited production capacity of the U.S. military-industrial complex. But the bad news for Taiwan didn't end there. Taiwan's legislature has passed changes that some see as favoring China. The Nationalist Party, also known as the Kuomintang or Kuomintang, KMT, lobbied for the legislation, which could bog down the president's allies in litigation and limit his ability to govern. The KMT officially supports unification with China and maintains channels of communication with the mainland, even though Beijing refuses to talk to the current president. This is why Taiwan's former president Ma Ying-jeou recently met with Xi Jinping. They simply ignore the authority of these men and directly address the CCP. Particularly troubling is new legislation that has provoked mass protests and fights in parliament. It gives lawmakers more power to control budgets, including defense spending. And since the KMT is in bed with China, one wonders how much control China has now gained over Taiwan's defense spending. But not all is lost. Now that the parliament has passed a law, the executive prime minister can either veto it or refer it to the president, who holds a different position according to Taiwan's government structure. The president must declare the law effective within 10 days or it will automatically go into effect. So there is still a chance that the bill won't pass. But the CCP is not spending all its time suppressing Taiwan because Hong Kong needs to be pulverized as well. In Hong Kong, the new national security law, which was fearlessly pushed through the Hong Kong Parliament in March, saw 6 people arrested for sedition. Under this law, any criticism of the CCP or the Hong Kong government can send you to jail. The trials of the accused can take place behind closed doors. Last Tuesday, the CCP got its first victim. 1 man and 5 women were arrested for publishing social media posts inciting hatred against the central government. Among those jailed is human rights activist Chu Hongtung. Officials said the social media posts were aimed at the sensitive date of June 4, the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square shootings. For years, Hong Kong, under the one country, two systems rule, was the only place in China to commemorate the tragedy. But after Beijing's brutal crackdown and seizure of power, that is no longer possible. Remember, China is offering Taiwan a new form of government under the one country, two systems model. They can become like Hong Kong. Now that's a proposal. The CCP is clearly not the only one proposing a new form of government for Taiwan. After the commercial break, we'll talk about how Iran's trade with China has failed to meet inflated expectations. Iran seems to be disappointed with the results of its Look East policy, because despite all the hype surrounding Chinese investment in the Islamic Republic, Beijing diplomatically protecting the country by helping it circumvent Western sanctions, Iran ranks only 38th on the list of China's largest trading partners. It's like finding out you're not in someone's top 8 friends on MySpace. If you're old enough to understand that reference, it's time to make an appointment for your first colonoscopy. Iran relies heavily on China for its economic survival, especially amid years of corruption, mismanagement, and Western sanctions against Tehran. And the CCP is the largest buyer of Iranian oil. But Iran's regional rivals, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UAE, get much more trade with China. Iran's favor with China is crumbling like their president falling from a helicopter. Is it too soon? China has reaped some benefits from its close relationship with Iran, such as plans to win contracts and build apartment buildings in Tehran. But some Iranians are unhappy because it comes at the expense of local contractors. Former Roads and Transportation Minister Ahmed Khorram said Iran has given China unprecedented privileges for our country. If Iran isn't actually benefiting much from all this trade, justifying it will be harder to justify. Although given China's problems in the construction industry, it's already hard to justify it. Meanwhile, China continues its crackdown on Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. We've covered some of this in previous videos, but a recent Sky News report detailed that religion in Xinjiang is on the verge of disappearing altogether. Which makes sense because making people and things disappear is what communist regimes excel best at. Surveillance has intensified, the CCP continues to demolish mosques, ban hijabs and other Islamic clothing, and censor the Quran. It's all part of an effort to assimilate the population and create a unified, CCP-controlled Chinese culture. Now I understand why they are destroying mosques. Turning buildings into ruins is the quickest way to give an area a typically Chinese look. The United States disputes Britain's claim that China is supplying lethal aid to Russia. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the U.S. has no evidence that China has sent or is preparing to send lethal aid to Russia. This directly contradicts the assertion of UK Defense Secretary Grant Shapps, who said they have evidence. Unfortunately, I don't know if Sullivan, who has a very bad reputation on issues involving China, is telling the truth, or if the Biden administration just doesn't want to be in a situation where they have to impose sanctions on China and really hold it accountable. The CCP has already supplied drone parts to Moscow, defended it diplomatically and economically, and urged Ukraine to capitulate. But China better watch out. If they keep this up, Joe Biden could get aggressive toward China. Passive-aggressive. So you support him? Wow, it's great that you're not embarrassed to look stupid. At a major conference in Australia, it was stated that there are currently over 1,200 Chinese spies operating in that country. And no, it wasn't a spy conference. The only conference you can only get into by sneaking in. We're talking about the Defending Australia Summit. Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister Richard Marles gave a speech acknowledging the differences between China and Australia, but emphasizing the need for open dialogue and trade between the two countries. So basically the same speech as any other Western leader on concerns about China. They're terrible at almost everything. But money, money. One of the keynote speakers was a former Chinese spy named Eric who escaped to Australia. I also did a full feature on him. I'll leave the link below. But here's the interesting thing. We hired a translator for Eric, and she immediately quit because she was afraid he would say something against China and she would have to say it out loud, and it would offend her. Yes, the CCP instills such terror in people in other countries. I think we need to confront the CCP more forcefully. Eric said that the CPC views Australia as a country without sovereignty. The CCP seems to have this view of almost all countries. He also said that China wants to prevent Australia from siding with the US in the event of war with China, and added that spies are there to intimidate Chinese living in Australia. Nevertheless, money, money, money. See you next time. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I wish you all the best.